of curriculum, and I really appreciate that made it happen. And it's just fulfilling one of the things we want people to be able to visit with us. I need a motion to approve the minutes from our last June 15th meeting.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
Second, have a first and a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
And before we start on the year-round school, we're going to let, I'm going to divert to Dr. Houlihan. He's going to give us an update on the opening of school and curriculum and all that.
Thank you, Mr. Ape. So I just want to let the committee know that obviously first day of school for traditional schools is Monday, and we are ready to go. I'm excited about the school year, and our teachers are ready. I especially wanted you all to know what we're doing around the work of literacy. In May, you all approved our new literacy framework. You've done a lot of support around classroom libraries, school-wide libraries, and those are being implemented as we speak. We just left a press conference with the Union County Public Library, and it was unbelievable. The turnout was standing room only. We had a lot of major media outlets there that are going to do a story on this. And I just wanted to say again, thank you to the Union County Public Library, to the county commissioners, to you all as board members for your unwavering support of what we're doing around literacy. We announced a new effort called Read With You. Casey's pulled it up on the screen, and it's what we've talked about as a team. It is the all call to the community to engage in 30 minutes of reading every single week with a first grade student. And we're launching this brand new website today. It is now live, and you can go there to sign up. And with the board's budget approval last year, we are going to allow folks to do this virtually as well through TutorMate, which is the online program that it doesn't matter where you're working or where you are. You could do this from the comfort of home if you'd like to. But we're really, really excited about this. And I just want to thank the curriculum committee in particular, because a lot of this effort came through you all. You gave us great feedback, and to our staff, great job. But, you know, I think the literacy push, the work around improving our lower performing schools, and our rebranding of our one-to-one technology, those are going to be three major efforts from an academic side in the coming year. So thank you all very much, and I'll turn it back to you, Mr. Ape.
Well, thank you for getting the team in place to make it happen too. Okay, first thing up on year-round school calendar.
So I asked for this one to be on here. This is not a decision-making item today. It is merely a conversation that I wanted to have with you all and maybe with the full board later on. One of the things I noticed before I came here was I looked at our data on year-round schools. And Dr. Jones, correct me if I'm wrong, I want to say 6 years ago, the state stopped allocating funding to our year-round schools for your intersession breaks. Up until that point, you had funding to bring back your neediest kids during those 2 or 3 week breaks, and you could tutor them. And so that was really the premise behind a year-round school. That money went away 6 years ago. And I'll tell you, accountability ratings get released September the 7th. We have a board meeting that day, and we'll be doing a public presentation to the board on how our performance was last year. But prior to that, if you look at the data of our year-round schools, we have 5 of them, and 4 of them are elementary. 1 is Wolf School. And of your 4 elementary schools, 3 have been considered by the state as low performing. And one of my concerns and questions is, does the structure of year-round schools work? What evidence do we have that it's working? I'm really concerned about attendance as well. And I'm really concerned that at Monroe Middle School, because 3 of the 4 of these schools feed into Monroe Middle School. And I've asked for the attendance for that. We're still working on it. But I worry because I had former principal there told me that when we have intercession breaks, a lot of his kids don't come because they're at home taking care of their younger siblings. And I just want you all to know that we're going to be evaluating that structure this year. I just want to make sure that as we're set up in the future, if we identify a problem or a challenge that's not working, we need to change it. And I'm not saying that we need to do that today. I want to engage our staff in that conversation as well and our community members. Year-round schools just has pluses and minuses, and I just worry that it's not working for our children. So any questions or comments from board or from staff?
If we look into going those schools back to a traditional calendar, what are we going to put in place for those kids that need remediation, things like that? What are we going to do to help those kids that can come back? Great
question. It's kind of like we're in between a rock and a hard place, because the board graciously approved a multi-million-dollar initiative to help these schools as well, turn them around. And so part of that is we will now have the funding to do what I described. Okay. This coming year during intercession, they're going to have funding it's local funding that you allocated, not the state, to bring back your neediest kids. And so part of me says, let's take this year and evaluate how is that working, because we want to make sure we're getting our return on investment. If you ever went back to a traditional setting, what I was thinking of is if that funding is going to remain in place for the following year, you could extend their school year. So you remember how you used to have, traditional summer school? You would end your school, but then bring back your neediest kids during the summer for that tutoring and try to prevent the quote unquote summer slide. That's just one idea. We'd provide transportation and those kinds of things, but I'm just concerned about the current setup and the data that I've seen about these schools. So
I would be curious. I'm sure you'll take this into consideration, but I would also talk to parents, particularly those that have elementary school students in as well as middle or high school, because I've got to imagine if you've got two working parents and you've got your youngest child in year-round schedule, there's got to be daycare issues, because they're not, and summer camps and things like that are not built for the year-round schedule. And so you've got gaps there. Like you say, it might take an older sibling to take care of. And if they don't have a grandparent or an aunt or an uncle or a neighbor that could provide care, that inconsistency in the schedule within the family, I could see could create problems.
Sure. We will definitely engage parents on this conversation this year. Again, we're not here to make a decision, but I wanted you to know that it's on my mind. It has been for my entire first year. And you know me, we're not going to sit back, and if something's not working, we're not going to just let it go on. But we need to really turn these schools back in the right direction. And again, because they're going to get the funding, that should make a big difference this year during those intercession breaks. But between Dr. Jones and Dr. Faust's office, we will definitely be engaging parents in this discussion.
When do you expect the data back from the absences before and during or after the intercession?
Probably within the next week or two, and we're working on that. It's because Power School is the attendance kind of platform. Every time we want to do this, we have to run a multi-page report, and it's extremely cumbersome. And so if you talk to Jonathan Bowers, he will tell you if he had hair, he'd be pulling it all out right now. It's extremely frustrating. So once we get it, we'll be able to provide it to you.
Thank you, Dr. Houlihan. Okay, moving on to summer camp update.
Good afternoon, Mr. Rape and committee members. We've had a busy summer, and a lot has taken place. One of those items that we've, of course, offered, according to the North Carolina Read to Achieve legislation, is the summer camp model. And we have completed all of our summer camps, and I'm going to let Dr. Crawford address the summary at this time.
So we had 7 summer reading campsites. We had 862 students to attend summer reading camp at those sites, and that does consist of first, second, and third grade. Third grade students have the opportunity to take the Read to Achieve test at the conclusion of summer reading camp. Our third graders did take that, and 19.8% of the third grade students who took the Read to Achieve test at the end passed, and were considered proficient with the third grade standards. And so that qualified them for a good cause exemption. So that means they were transitioned to a regular fourth grade classroom for this school year.
Now, the students who did not pass have another opportunity to take at the beginning of the year or in November?
It's in November.
Okay, the third graders coming in take at the beginning of the year, but they will take that test in November. Those students, unless there is something beyond read to achieve that was a reason for them to be retained, will go into fourth grade, but they receive remediation with third grade standards as well as the fourth. So those students do go in, and they have a chance to take that again. It's really interesting because years ago when we had the summer school model and we had students that came to summer school for elementary and they would retake the end of grade test. And our pass rate then on that was about 16% that we saw. As a matter of fact, I estimated to Jonathan, I gave him the number 18, was just a prediction based upon what, and it is, when you're talking about summer camps and remediation, it's very similar to what we saw in the summer camps, but we will continue to support those students who did not pass the Read to Achieve test, and they'll have chances to take that again.
Dr. Jones, from the teacher standpoint, the fourth grade teachers that have students that didn't pass the Read to Achieve, who helps them with that, working them towards that November test? Do they have to do it on their own, or are there tutors that will step in and help them?
I would say that C, all of the above, and let me explain that. Our teachers, of course, we work with them on differentiating where our students are. A student may move in this year where they're coming from, they were not demonstrating proficiency, or they may not be at grade level. Teachers have students that vary in abilities beyond the grade level they're assigned. So we do support teachers with remediation, but there are additional supports we put in. Interventionist. We have assistants who work with LLI, which is level literacy. Intervention. Dr. Houlihan, and of course the emphasis this year with the tutoring in fourth grade, that we have, there are supports that we're putting in place to be able to extend and help the teachers. We do assist the teachers with that. Even the resources that we have, for example, iReady is a resource that gives the students a diagnostic and then will match digital lessons that are diagnostic prescriptive to the student's needs.
Two follow-up questions. Are at a school that has multiple fourth grades, are these students distributed among the teachers?
We do ask for schools to identify a transitional fourth grade classroom teacher, and when we say identify, taking your strongest teacher to be that teacher of record for those students. So
you're saying you sort of concentrate them?
It depends on the number of students.
Well, I know if we're concentrating them among the stronger fourth grade teachers, then we certainly need to recognize that too. What happens for somebody who's learning the ropes? What happens if they don't pass the November Read to Achieve test?
That they will have another opportunity at the end of the school year to take the fourth grade EOG and have that opportunity to pass at that point. And if they don't pass, then the principal and the team at the school will make the decision about promotion or retention. And if the student is promoted, there is a mark that goes in the power school, kind of that says
hasn't demonstrated proficiency.
Right. It just says that they didn't demonstrate proficiency on those third grade reading standards, and that will
so the
be noted in
curriculum
power school.
Committee needs to be mindful. We may need to make some hard decisions because, as Dr. Houlihan said, we need to fix that problem and not just keep moving it up the grade structure.
Well, and a lot of that is how you design your intervention, how we support. It's not always remediation. It's also how you intervene. So, for example, the literacy initiative, what we're doing with classrooms, libraries, all of that is to target more students demonstrating proficiency. proficiency. Those are the strategies that we want to keep working on.
Well, I personally, and I feel like everybody else, we will support you anyway. Everybody wants their child to succeed. So
Well,
what we can do there.
And supporting us with our classroom libraries, you already have demonstrated that. So that's what we want to continue to work with.
You mentioned, can I ask you a question? You mentioned the 862 total students in summer camp. Do you have the numbers of how many third graders we had that in total did not pass read to achieve? And then what the number is that attended the summer camp? So I'm wondering how many fell through the cracks and were not or did not attend the summer camp that we have to worry about for this school year.
So you're asking for students who could have attended but did not?
Correct. How many in total did we have that did not pass read to achieve in the third grade last year?
I can get those numbers for you.
Okay.
And something we'll point out to you and let you know when it's posted, we are required by law to post the whole progression of our students from third grade all the way through the process. So for example, we'll start with the number of third grade students who entered last year, and then they give what they call the beginning of grade test. There were some students that demonstrated proficiency. We will have what that number is. Then we'll go to the next time the test was offered, what that number was, and we'll show each of the steps we're required. We have last year's already posted. So now that we're getting this information back, Mr. Bowers will be posting that information online, and we'll let you know when that's available.
Dr. Houlihan, with our school counselors or school psychologists, will these people be able to intervene with the parents so that we need to get those kids to these summer reading camps and stuff like that?
That's a big effort of their responsibilities. The other strategy I'll point out that concerns me, and this is also another way our community could help us. I worry that we have a lot of our students that don't have things like home libraries. They don't have books at home. And so part of our social workers, we've talked with them about also what are the partners out there that if you identify families that have kids that need resources like that, who can help us help them? So that'll be a big part of their work.
Well, I can see now where those social workers will need to focus on the children that didn't come to summer camp and the 80% that didn't pass read to achieve. Those are going to be their highest priority. Okay. Moving on to House Bill 149.
House Bill 49 has a section that states that prior to the start of the 2017-18 school year, and when they wrote this, they're looking at the traditional calendar, of course, that local boards of education shall review the diagnostic tools and screening instruments used for dyslexia, dyscalculia, or other specific learning disabilities that ensure that they are age appropriate and they are effective in determining the diagnostic tool and how effective that is. Of course, you've been a key part in helping us provide resources and strategies in this area. We had a very successful implementation of the SPIRE curricula last year that the board supported. We're getting ready to go through another training to be able to add more students more teachers to that training, as well as other strategies. And I asked Ms. Webb to join us, as well as Amy Coffitz. Amy is our lead psychologist who can provide this information for you.
Absolutely. Good afternoon. Thank you. Good afternoon. We prepared a handout, and I believe Dr. Jones that had forwarded to you about assessing dyslexia, dyscalculia, and other specific learning disabilities. And as soon as we realized about the House Bill 149 and Amy began to prepare this. So what we are looking at it from the special education side. So I wanted Amy to go through with you and kind of talk with you about the things that we utilize as far as evaluation processes to help us, identify students that exhibit those characteristics.
Yes, and I'm very glad to be here. My name again is Amy Coffitz, and it's nice to meet all of you. Some of you I know, and it's good to see you again. And I will answer any questions as we go, so feel free just to stop me or raise your hand or just stop me altogether. I have been working with the school psychologists over the past year to not only further our research into dyslexia and dyscalculia as well as dysgraphia, but also to identify the measures that we have on hand to assess those areas. We certainly have, I think in Union County Public Schools, a vast majority of our tests that are geared for diagnosing and not necessarily diagnosing, but assessing learning disabilities, including dyslexia. So within those, we, as a group, we identified specific components of tests that can be pulled together to assess dyslexia. For example, if you're looking for phonological processing or you're pulling out reading fluency, there are various measures that have components that touch on that across batteries. So we may pull from one test to look at that skill and then also pull from another test to get another picture of that same skill. I think on page 3, as it starts at the bottom of page 2, I noted here just the list of the tests that we have on hand. And I will say that I'm very excited about Union County having so many tools readily available. It is not like this in other counties. For new hire psychologists that we have brought on board, they have indicated that we have a variety of tools that they have never even had access to. So that's wonderful. And these are lists of IQ tests as well as achievement measures, as well as phonological processing and language measures that can be used in combination to assess dyslexia.
I have a question.
Sure.
So once a learning difficulty has been identified,
Right.
is the parent's consent required for
Okay.
service? Yes, for service, I'm sorry.
Absolutely,
Yes, ma'am.
absolutely. And we only get involved at this level after the child has gone through some really good interventions at the core level in the classroom and within the intervention team process or MTSS process. Then the parents do give permission for us to do these evaluations. And then if the child does meet the eligibility criteria, then they also have to give permission for us to provide those services. And we do indicate in our reports that the child, if they do have characteristics associated with dyslexia, we say that because that's what we must do. So we say that the child has, we do not diagnose, but we do say that the child has a significant number of characteristics that would commonly be associated with a diagnosis of, whether it's dysgraphia or dyscalculia or dyslexia or autism, et cetera.
How is the determination made that this is enough of a difficulty that might justify a 504 or an IEP plan?
Okay, that's a great question. I think during the intervention team process, a lot of interventions are put in place at different tiers and data is gathered to see if the child is resistant to those interventions. If the child continues to be resistant to interventions even after they've been changed, then that warrants moving on for assessment. And through all of the data, we certainly don't look at testing as a one-shot deal. They got this score on this test, that makes them eligible. It's in combination with all of the data that's gathered through those preliminary phases. Then we compare it to what we need to do based on North Carolina DPI requirements.
And what exactly triggers all the testing? Is it a teacher's concern, a parent's concern, all of the above? My child is great in math, my child is great in social studies, but just can't seem to read and doesn't like it. And so if you're telling me if it's on the teacher level, that tells me that it is most important that our frontline folks, our teachers, are able to recognize that this testing might be necessary for this particular student and maybe not this one, but this one is. Is that the way it's going to be triggered?
Well, actually, all of the above, as you mentioned. We do have teachers that notice differences in learning with their children. We also have parents that come and say, we have a family history. I've been concerned about Johnny since he was 3. We also have universal screenings that are done within schools. Sometimes professionals do those universal screenings and say, oh my goodness, the reading rate there is very low. We have physicians giving their input. So we really take the input from lots of folks, but school psychologists get involved in the intervention process. So if a teacher sees characteristics that would be consistent with dyslexia, then we get involved in providing screenings and education, those kinds of things.
Mr. Sides,
And
just
I
to
think-
follow up on that, just to be clear, when you go through this intervention team process, and then as they said, you're resistant to certain interventions, and you're doing all that you can. Maybe this child needs to be tested. Parent gives consent. What you won't find, and y'all tell me if I'm wrong, you shouldn't have regular classroom teachers saying this is the assessment that this child needs to take.
Right.
That's turned
Right.
over to our experts and our child
Right.
psychology team. They're the ones that then say, because if you look at this,
The teacher's going to raise the concern,
right,
and that's where the professionals get involved.
there you go.
Right.
Yeah, but we're not testing everybody. I mean, it's not like once you enroll your child in kindergarten, he's going to get tested for dyslexia.
Right.
There's going to be a trigger that's going to bring a team together to decide that, this is a special path. We need to go to deal with this. Is that correct?
And as I've spoken with Dr. Crawford and Dr. Healy, they give several benchmarks, the M-CLASS, the Fountas Pinnell spelling assessments, all of those things that they do at that reg ed level helps them to understand if they're seeing significant issues. And then they take that information, plan interventions through that MTSS and intervention process. And once it's deemed we're not getting anywhere with what we're doing, then we look at EC eligibility.
And we're looking for this on all grade levels, correct? Not just elementary school.
Absolutely.
Because somebody could have slipped through the cracks this many
Right.
years, coped with it,
Right.
and now it's finally starting to catch up with them. Or transferred into the district at an older age and had never been picked up before.
Right. We try our very best not to let any child fall through the cracks. Yes.
Great.
Any more questions?
I have one comment. Dr. Houlihan, will this be one of the jobs of our social workers to go out and maybe speak to the parents who don't feel comfortable asking for help? A parent that asks for their child to be evaluated under this program, they've got their parent being an advocate, but we've got a lot of parents that just don't know what to do.
I think you've got classroom teachers that can help parents with that. I don't necessarily know about the social worker. Maybe I don't know when I say yes. I don't want to say no, but mostly that falls to this team, our team of psychotherapists. Now, a lot of the two middle schools in particular that are going to have dedicated help, a lot of them have said we need to have a regular social worker, but that second position, they're looking at what they're calling a mental health therapist. And those have a very strong field of expertise, and maybe that might be a role that could help, but it's got to be a team effort.
And let me say that we are fortunate in one of the few school systems that had the foresight many years ago. We have a dedicated EC social worker that works with our parents. Once they are referred into the process, if they so require, Belle works very hard. Her name's Belle Walker, and she works very hard with those parents.
I appreciate what you're saying, and I think that's answering my question. But the parents who don't feel comfortable talking about these, I just want us to reach out to them and say, we can help you if you'll just listen to us.
I will tell you that the school psychologists, we do a lot of home visits. I just did one last week with a family that was very resistant to come in. I think they were scared. They didn't understand a lot of what was going on. So I went to the home, stood outside, and just talked to them as a person to person about the process and what we wanted to do. We want to help their child. And this is how we can do that together. And they actually, it gives me goosebumps because they were all for it. It's just a matter of bridging that communication. So we do have school psychologists. We do that a lot, but I encourage them not to go alone, of course. But
Well, that's what I would like to see happen, the ones that are scared, and let's
Right.
reach out to them.
Absolutely.
absolutely.
Okay. I think we can move on to, thank you, ladies. The parent portal, textbooks, digital textbooks.
Okay, thank you very much. This conversation began at the last curriculum committee, although certainly there have been questions regarding our textbooks and our resources all along. But we had a robust conversation back at our last curriculum committee, and this was regarding well, really in the beginning about the number of textbooks that we have available digitally, as well as our digital resources. But it really grew also into a conversation about how are we informing our parents? How are we involving our students and making sure they know what resources are available? And it really blossomed, and you guys gave us a homework assignment. So we're here to turn in our homework. Now, it may not be completely without question, but I am very pleased at what Casey Rimmer and her staff have done this summer. And I think you're going to be pleased with what you see. So I'm going to ask her to present, and then specific questions that you have, we'll work with. So Ms. Rimmer, thank you very much.
Awesome. Thank you. So I'm going to start, and I moved over here so that we could talk and I could take notes and you could see the tour that I'm about to give you. But thanks. So we kind of set out to collect all these resources in one place that was easy to use. And we kind of talked a little bit. We toured all kinds of different portals and all kinds of different aggregated resources in all kinds of districts all over the country to try and figure out the best way that we could communicate with our stakeholders what our digital resources were for digital teaching and learning. And we came up with this idea of a family portal. And we're really very careful about calling it a family portal for a couple of reasons. If you've ever been in Power School as a parent, you know that that's called the parent portal, right? And that is, we didn't want to be confused. We didn't want folks to be confused. But I think more importantly, we wanted to call this the family portal because we want parents and children to sit together and look at it together. Some of the restrictions that we have in some of our digital resources is that we buy them by license. So maybe we buy one license for every child. And when we do that, maybe as a parent sitting in isolation in their office at work can't access that resource. So we really wanted to kind of call this the family portal intentionally so that they would work through it together as a family. And really this is a big launch of our Empowered initiative. And Empowered is our rebrand of our one-to-one. So Empowered is basically taking the next level of our one-to-one. I would say that we spent a great amount of time, energy, and money in our one-to-one initiative. And we did a really great job of getting those devices, making it a priority, and getting them in the hands of students. The next step is to take those devices and use them to transform teaching and learning. And that's what Empowered is about. So we've used this term Empowered, and we could have empowered students, we could have empowered teachers, we could have whole empowered classrooms, we could have empowered schools, but we've called this the Empowered Family Portal because we want to empower our families to kind of use this as a resource for them, right? So this is an introduction to Empowered. Maybe my mouse won't reach this far. Maybe if I sit on this side, it's all right. I can sit right there. I'm just, so this is the introduction to Empowered, and this is just a quick overview. Like, are you sure? Yeah. Okay. All right, great, thank you. That should be plenty close enough. Oh, it is. Okay. So, thank you. So this is the Empowered, what is Empowered page, and it's just a quick overview. And we basically broke the Empowered portal into 4 pages. The first page is what we'll call, Mr. Rape called everything else fluff, because this is what he wanted. So we wanted to build his vision with the Empowered Family Portal. And this is the Empowered Family Portal. So what you see here is a list of all of these resources that students have available to them, all right? And let's say, Mr. Sides, would you tell me, would you like to look at elementary, middle, or high?
Elementary.
Elementary. All right, so if we look at elementary, I've filtered this list down to the resources that are available for elementary. Some of these resources, like Mayan, right, and you can't see quite well enough on this large screen, but on your computer, you would see that this says Mayan is a personalized literacy environment for K-5 students in UCPS. Login is required, and students are provided login information from their classroom teacher, right? That's why this little lock is right there. A lock on the tile means that login information is required.
But you can log in from.
But it tells you, yes, and it tells you where that login information comes from and what it is. So if I click on Mayan, now I'm on my way into Mayan. So I could click in elementary school, and then you're at the Mayan login page.
That's great. You don't have to find the teacher's website at the school. You can go straight to this.
Right, right. So here I am in elementary, all right? Let's take a look at another level. Let's go to high school, all right? And maybe I know that specifically my child is in high school math. So I drill it down to high school math. Now I have all these resources that are labeled as high school math, right? And maybe I'm going to look at, I'm trying to find one that I can read here, Calculus, 7th edition. This textbook contains the first 9 chapters of calculus with analytic geometry used for AP calculus classes. Students enrolled in AP calc classes are each distributed a copy of this textbook. Now this one doesn't, this one's a print textbook. So if you click on this tile, it just brings you back to this portal, right? Because there's no login available, it's a print resource. So I can also look at, I can filter by resource type. So if you are looking to see how many digital textbooks we have, you can pull up all the digital textbooks across levels and see them all right here. Those are the digital textbooks that we have. You can also see the different types of, the other different resources we have are digital databases. A lot of those are managed by our media specialists in the media center, our print textbooks, and our digital interactives. These digital interactives are things that you can move and touch. They're not just static content on the page.
Can you access Canvas from this as well to give you?
So not necessarily from right here, but I will show you some more, okay? So this is really just a list of, I'm a parent, I'm a family, and I'm trying to figure out what resources my child is using in their class, whatever level they are.
So Casey, what if my home language is not English?
So we can translate this page. We have it in Spanish right here. And then the tile is translated to Spanish, right? We also can, let me go back. If you click here, you can translate this content to any of the languages the school website can translate to, which is a lot of languages. I don't know the exact number. So this content can be translated into any language, any home language.
Casey, to deal with it as Mr. Sides, would it be advantageous to put a link to Canvas there on?
So I'm going to show you, there is a link to Canvas. I'll show you where that is. Yes. Okay. Now Canvas is a little bit different because it doesn't deliver content, it organizes content. So I didn't want to, we could put a link here, but students log into Canvas through NCF Cloud, which is another portal. We could put it here, I think for sure, but
we'll just show what we have.
This is content for sure, yeah.
Casey, would you show quickly that there are some textbooks that we are able to build that are what they call open source. There are more and more. So if you'll look at the 6th grade or 7th grade social studies, and because that's open source, it's not locked. So could you show like a textbook for 6th grade?
So for this example, I'm going to drill right to 6th grade because we know that that's what we're looking for. You can go by level and by grade. And I'm going to click on 6th grade science. And this shows us what we call the CK12 Flexbook. And CK12 allows you to use all of their resources. And it allows, what we do in this district is we have teachers, expert 6th grade science teachers, go into Flexbook and find the pieces that fit with our curriculum, and they build these textbooks. So if you'll see here, Andrea Smith is a science teacher at Porter Ridge Middle School. So she and this person, who's actually the real author of this book, Andrea pulled the pieces that match our units, and she has kind of aggregated this data. So as a parent, you could look at this, and there's one of these for every science unit in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade.
Casey,
so this is one that you don't have a login for. I'm sorry, Mr. Smith.
No, that's okay. I have a question. I'm thinking of the families without desktops and or laptops. Is this mobile friendly?
Yes, ma'am. I pulled it up on my phone
I just
today.
pulled it up on my phone too.
Cool. I was going to do it. All right. Thank you.
All right, so let me give you a tour of a couple of the other pages. Does anybody have any questions about this sortable table? I will add to this that we are going to, now we just announced our partnership with the library, which will increase the access for the digital resources for our students to their digital resources. And when we're ready to go and students can get into those resources, we'll add those tiles here too. So they will sort out just the same. Nina Meadows, the director of the library, said that she was on board to help me sort out so we could match them up to content. We could match them up to levels as well, right?
Will that be so that parents can take their, if they don't, like Ms. Sturdivant said, they can go into the Monroe Library and pull it up? And what about the Marshall Library?
All of them.
Okay.
All of them. They could go there and pull it up. And we're planning on some professional development for the librarians at the public libraries so that they can navigate this site too and know where to go. So the next page that we have listed is the family Q&A. And this page is some of the more reoccurring questions that we get about digital teaching and learning and Empowered. The 3 links at the top, these are resources. I think you probably remember from the last presentation that we did. These are the student startup pages, and this is basically some of the resources that we put out there for students. So this way, one of the things that came out loud and clear from the meeting that we kind of presented all those curriculum resources to you, that One Day in Technology Services, is we aggregated all those resources for students in the student startup page, and we aggregated all those resources for teachers in their teacher startup page, but we didn't have a startup page for parents. Right? And we didn't have a way to deliver that startup page to parents. So this is kind of filling that gap. And now parents can say, well, I have a middle school student, and they can click on middle school resources, and it will take them to that middle school startup page. And the students are very familiar with that because their computers go to that every time they turn them on. So that's the first one. I have some other questions. Here is, how do I access teacher class pages, Mr. Sides? This is a linked tutorial and a video demonstration on how you get to a teacher's class Canvas page. How do I check my child's attendance and grades? This is a link to the PowerSchool portal and the PowerSchool app. And how do I help them access digital textbooks? This links us to the page we just previously toured. So we will add more questions to that as they come about, and that'll definitely be a dynamic page.
Ms. Rimmer, I have a question going back to the science teacher from Porter Ridge. Is that what she has put together available for all 6th grade science teachers?
Yes. Yes.
And that's wonderful. That's basically, she has generated a 6th grade textbook digitally.
Yes.
For her curriculum.
Yes. And
For-
they come together as a team and at the end of the school year, and they revise those materials. They work as a team to kind of archive them and update them as they need every year.
Could you go back to the UCPS homepages, show me how you got to,
So I can't right this second because we want to share this with you, make any final tweaks.
oh, it's not live yet.
That's right. And then I'll show you where it's going to be.
Okay.
And then once we make those final tweaks, we're going to make it public.
That's a very good point. This is not live yet. We wouldn't go live until we showed you guys. So it's not live on the web yet.
Just a couple more quick things. So we have categorized resources. This is a little bit of a transition from, we had an old page that was buried about 6 layers in that had a lot of this information on it. We do have some information about the new apps. And we'll add, you may have heard about the Where's the Bus app. We're going to add that in this spot right here. We have school nutrition. You can see some of the menus and things like that. Those directions and these apps are being populated right here. More information on the parent portal for PowerSchool. These are just the DPI curriculum resources, just a link, some links to some digital citizenship content. These are all the pieces of the paperwork for the one-to-one rollout in grades 3 through 12. So the notifications in both English and Spanish. And then these digital tools are a repeat. Those are the startup pages. Some information about Google, about what our students have available on their Chromebook specifically, and some other digital tools. So this is just another resource. And the last page, something that you said actually, Mr. Sides, when we first met, when you were on the phone, is that you sometimes felt like you didn't know where the resources were, so you couldn't help your child, right? And I connect that to when I was a child, my parents were trying to help me with my math homework. They might flip back a couple of pages in the textbook, reread the chapter, find out how to divide fractions, and then help me through the process. And I think that that's one of the gaps that we have, or that we had before we had access to these resources. And one of the things that I would do as a parent now is if my student was trying to do something that was advanced and I wasn't sure exactly how to do it, I might go to Khan Academy. I would teach myself very quickly, and okay? And then I would help my student along. And so these supplemental resources are not resources necessarily that our teachers are directly using, but they would support, they would preview or review the content that's being learned in class.
So one piece of feedback that we need to work on with this page in particular, you know how the tiles that you saw earlier that have a description? I worry, Casey, that some of our parents may see read theory and they don't know what that is, or Khan Academy. And so if we could make this like the tiles with a description, like a one sentence, you know, Khan Academy is best used for the following, because as an example, Khan Academy is free. And I've told all of our high school principals, you need to make sure all of your high school kids have an account. It is the research-based, proven #1 SAT prep program out there, and it's free. And so, you know, it's one of those deals where if we could make sure that there's some kind of language there to help understand which is the best resource for me to choose from.
Yeah, so this is that Khan Academy SAT, and that is linked right here under SAT Prep Khan Academy.
Casey, how about the Naviance accounts? Will they be able to access, or can we do a link on it as far as that goes as well?
We could do a link as well.
Yes,
Yeah.
so we'll have that.
Yep. And so I kind of wanted to point out that this page is a living page, right? We're always going to be adding to it. These tiles, we're going to continue to add to them. I told you the library resources. We're going to add the Where's the Bus app. So this is definitely going to be a work in progress for sure.
Casey, building on what Dr. Houlihan said, could that be put on the frequently asked questions, maybe that the Khan Academy
Sure.
has answers to questions? Because I was just thinking parents wouldn't even know to click there.
Mm-hmm.
It looks like something that they're not involved in.
We certainly can. We certainly can. We'll direct them in that direction. It's a very great resource for parents.
Well, you might also want to mention what we're going to be doing with parents this fall as well.
So we've also outlined 4 nights that we're going to have parent nights across the district in various locations of the district. And we're going to share with them this empowered family portal. We're going to introduce them to the apps that they can use. There's a Canvas app so that you could get the Canvas app and navigate to your students' pages. You can enroll in them. We're doing a lot of work in the Canvas area to streamline how parents get access into Canvas. Instead of just finding the page, we're going to enroll them in the page so that they are parents of the course. So we're working on that. We're going to share with them some parent portal things from Power School, some of the digital citizenship items.
Is the long-term
That's not portal. I define portal as an access to them to talk about resources. I think that's a good question, and maybe we can ask how do I contact you?
Yeah. That's more of, in my opinion, that's more of a communications issue. And I think what Casey is trying to say is, I know what you're saying, Mr. Sides, but this is really about access to resources, not about, right, and how do I help at home? And that was the intent. We're not quite where you want us to go, I guess. And I would still say the traditional forms of email, parent face-to-face conferences, but maybe we can add what's the best way to communicate with my teacher, and then we can point them to teacher web pages. So,
Ms. Rimmer, when you do those 4 work sessions around the county, I'm sure they'll probably do a Connect Ed announcement.
Yes.
And anything that they need to do beforehand, would you communicate to them, you know, like they may need to bring their laptop
Yes.
that night so that they're not sitting there and watching it, but they're actually.
That's right. We would certainly.
Let's assume they don't know anything about what's going to happen there until tell them everything to bring. Okay.
The other part of that evening, and we have Jessica Gardner here, who's our director of college readiness. She doesn't know what I'm about to say, I don't think. So I like to surprise people sometimes. One of the things I'd like to build into these 4 nights, and then, because they will be at 4 specific high schools. But then we've got 7 other high schools. And so one of the things I want to do during the month of September is a FAFSA Roadshow, where we partner with SPCC and other agencies, and we go out and help parents literally sit knee to knee to complete the FAFSA form for federal application for free student aid. Last year, we had too many of our kids that did not complete that process by the deadline, and the deadline has changed to October the 1st. And so what I'd like to see is, under her leadership, maybe you combine the 2 efforts at these 4 schools. You do the digital showcase, but part of that is you have counselors from across the county and experts that can come in and sit down and pull up the online application and just rotate parents through it.
Another thing I just thought of, can y'all not live stream, but video one of these? And then we could archive it, and then people that can't make it to those workshops
Can access it. Yep. We've talked with communications about that
Okay.
already.
And to the committee, before the meeting, I talked with Ms. Rimmer, and I didn't address this, but she'll send it to all of us as soon as it goes live, and then y'all can forward it, share it. And I told her to write it like we wrote it, but make it sound good, and then you can sign it and send it on. And she's definitely exceeded my expectations.
Well, I want to thank you all as a committee, because the feedback we got from you was spot on. And I really want to say thank you to our staff and to Casey. And this took a lot to come together. And I'm really excited about this. This is kind of like a one-stop shopping for your parents. And as a parent of kids in the system, I'm excited from that perspective. So thank you all for your support and for your feedback. And thank you to Casey and the team.
How many is on your team? Because I can see a storm of questions coming.
It's a team of one.
Oh, Lord.
But we have had folks that you see, all the members of John's team, plus technology, plus communications, plus the list goes on, have been involved in this process. So that's when I say it's been a team effort.
Okay, Dr. Jones, you want to introduce the next part of this?
Sure. We have an item, Academy Supply versus Demand. I've asked Mr. Robert Filter to join us, who works particularly with this area. He's director of our career readiness. He has provided some data for this meeting. We, believe it or not, tried to make this as simple as we could, but the process of selection, particularly if a lottery is involved, can be complicated, but it is methodical. It is followed, and I did verify, even above Mr. Filter, I verified the numbers if they were correct with CATA as well, and they were verified there as well. So we are open to your questions, your direction, as far as what we can do to provide information.
So with the Central Academy lottery information. I did get some information from Dr. Fasan regarding that lottery, and so I utilized that input to create this spreadsheet.
Could we take the first one and just go across all the different columns? Because if I'm reading this right, it had 18 slots available
Yes, sir.
in computer engineering. 29 it was their first choice,
Correct.
but only 16 made the academic standards to qualify for the lottery.
That's correct.
Correct?
Correct.
Okay. But then 23 students were offered spots. So
Correct.
how
because
did that work?
There is a second choice in the lottery,
Okay.
but it gets a little muddled, and we had a spreadsheet again, as Dr. Jones had indicated. It got pretty wide, and from a second choice perspective, it doesn't necessarily say I really wanted that. It's sort of like, okay, I want to go to CATA, and here's a second choice that I might
Right.
have.
Right.
And so we sort of excluded that for this purpose
Okay.
for now.
So if we pick up there, Mr. Sods.
Yeah.
23 were offered because that next slide says 5 declined.
Right.
So that meant by the time the lottery took place, 5 students or their families decided, we're going to stay at our home school. So
Right.
they declined. So you add, then you,
There's your 18.
there's your 18.
Now-
And then there was not a waiting list for first choice.
Okay.
First choice.
So the 23, is that the first and second choice
No.
that qualified?
Yes.
Not that was just their total, their first and second. Okay.
You're pulling off that second choice list.
Right. But they qualified as well.
They did qualify.
Okay. All right.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So if I'm reading this correctly, if I add, not including the auditions,
Correct.
if I add this up right, we had a waiting list of 208, if you add all that together. Now, is that 208 that qualified and just didn't get picked in the lottery, this last column?
Correct.
Okay. So there's our demand above supply, correct?
Correct.
Okay. All right. What is the process for determining a new academy, either at one of our high schools or at CATA? How does that process work?
From a Central Academy perspective, I can answer that.
Well, for Central Academy,
Yeah.
these academies have been in, many of these have been in place since Central Academy opened several years ago.
Right.
They have looked at times at adding based upon student interest.
Right.
So there's been a big interest with music and looking at music recording. That is something they've had an interest. That was an academy they expanded upon this past year at Central Academy.
Okay.
But basically, these are the academies that have been there. Where we've done a lot of our academy expansion, of course, as you know, is out in the schools.
Right. Right.
And that's been based on student interest and
Right.
industry discussions.
The
as to what
site-based
needs
team
are.
and everything.
Correct.
I guess my concern is we have unmet demand in existing academies at CATA. How do we want to make sure we meet that demand before we open up any new academies? Is that fair to say? I mean, if you don't take into account the two music that require auditions.
Correct. Correct.
We have 208 students who didn't get into academies they want. Okay. Before we start any new ones, should we not try and do whatever expansion we can to meet the demands of the existing ones? Is that?
Well,
Here's
and I know
here's where
that's-
he's.
that
Let me give you a concrete example. This is on my mind. How many kids on this at CATA applied but did not get into medical science?
A lot.
108. So the question is, where you have lower ratios when you have info systems comp engineering with 0 on the wait list and 18 slots. You with me?
Yes.
So where are those you have academies with very few demand, but your medical science is in huge demand? What Mr. Sides is asking, why not double down our efforts on medical science? If that's really the most popular or where the demand is, when do we get to the point where we say we're no longer going to be offering this info systems, whatever that is, but we will be having 3 different medical sciences academy? Because you're not going to meet that demand unless you do that, or unless you open a new school, or unless you shift an academy somewhere else, or on the medical sciences, we've talked about our vision for Monroe High School,
Right, exactly.
and that becoming your health sciences academy wall to wall. There you go.
Right.
So
Right.
is that a fair?
That's a very, very fair question. And before I forget, let me bring up to your point about the Health Science Academy at Monroe. Because our academies in the high schools, correct me if I'm wrong, we do not provide transportation. At CATA, we do. So if we say, okay, from now on, health sciences is going to be at Monroe, are we going to provide system-wide transportation like we do the students at CATA? So that was my reasoning behind asking for the academies at the various high schools. Because we don't know, or maybe we can somehow find out how many kids can attend, let's say, the culinary academy at Porter Ridge because they can't get there.
Right.
They just don't, they don't drive, but they want to go. But if they're at CATA, they get into CATA, they can have their needs met as far as what's offered there. So we have to be careful about, in my mind, it comes to either you're going to have an academy somewhere and you're going to make sure that every student that qualifies and wants it, transportation is not going to be an issue, or you're not going to meet all the needs for everybody because of transportation limitations, a lottery, or what have you. And that was my concern. And it especially hit home when I could see the numbers of the waiting list for CATA. So what do we do? Do we, long term, what do we do? Do we increase the capacity at CATA? Do we, instead of making it a full-blown high school, do we make it just for academies instead of all the other classes that consist of a high school curriculum? Or do we have to look at another school because our demographics are telling us that our high school population is going to go down in the future? And I'm just throwing out a name. Don't anybody get upset when I start to use the name of a school that something's going to change. But let's say somewhere like a Marvin Ridge where the student population is going down. Do we develop that as a CATA West, if you will, that offers a lot of these academies? And then you can look at, from a geographic standpoint, it might be easier for a student to get to CATA, transfer from CATA, versus the same academy to meet the overflow demand at a Marvin Ridge. And we can provide transportation there because geographically it makes sense. Maybe that's something we need to look at long term to meet the demand, unless we want to start doing more bricks and mortar. Does that make sense?
I think we will definitely spend the coming months and years studying what you're describing. Solving that or answering that question today is hard.
No, I don't want an answer. I want it to provoke thought.
Yeah.
In that these academies are great, but unfortunately there's two different levels of academies, really, when you think about it. At the high school level, you got to get there. Right. At CATA, all you got to do is get in. And we'll get you there.
Yeah. So to your point, I mean, it's one of those deals where, let's just use CATA as an example. Dr. Faust and some folks walked the building with Dr. Facin to look at this idea of why can't we just expand your enrollment to meet your demand or meet your demand? Well, in theory, you would think that would be logical. But when you walk, and I would encourage you all to do this, when you walk with her, she will take you into very specifically designed classrooms that are being used by small numbers of kids because of the way the school is designed and because of the academy programs. You think about their auto tech, their shops are huge, and you can't put 30 kids in that auto repair. It's unsafe. And so if we're ever want to be serious about upping the enrollment there, I would contend that you would have to take some strong measures to completely change the academies, because you'd have to find the space. And there are so many labs and other kinds of spaces in that building that you'd have to completely renovate and redo. Otherwise, you've got major issues around safety, around overcrowding, and those kinds of things. So that's my short response today about the CATA and the enrollment. I think part of what we have to do is, and I've talked to Robert and John about this, identify where your interest is low. And begin a phase out plan of where you have academies in the county that you don't have enough demand. And what I'd rather see is where you have that demand, why not replicate or expand?
So
That's just an idea. I mean,
I have a question. So how do you define demand versus career outlook? So demand meaning the students have an interest, or like what is the career outlook? Like I know health sciences at Monroe, that has a great career outlook, but I'm thinking of like cosmetology and some of the other ones, the career outlook is not as strong. If that makes sense.
It does make sense. And I asked that question on Monday to Robert right there. And he can make a comment on this. The one thing that I will say is all of our academies, which is a blessing, not a lot of school systems have done this. All of our academies are linked to regional high wage or medium wage jobs right when you get out of high school. And so I had a concern about that, Ms. Sturdivant. My concern there is lessened a little bit, and you can give details on that. He does work with business and industry on the job demand, because to your point, we've said as a team, we're not going to have these CTE and academy programs if you're going to graduate from high school and go to college and there's no program of focus for you, or graduate from high school and immediately go to the workforce, but the job is not there. So Robert, you can make further comments on that.
And we had a discussion, as Dr. Houlihan said the other day, and Dr. Faust made a comment about his wife, and when she goes to get her hair done, it's quite a price that's paid, for that to be done. And so from cosmetology, although there are certainly some low wage jobs out there, there are also opportunities for them to make a good wage, rent a booth and be their own entrepreneur, have their own entrepreneurship, and make a good wage as doing so. And so we try to make sure that there's a good balance between interest and need in the community, and as well as transferable skills, because if the student's interested in working with their hands, and we recently have increased interest in automotive, and although there may not be a specific automotive job, it will transfer well to a lot of the manufacturing jobs, and it's hard to get a student to take a manufacturing class, but they might take an automotive class that has that transferable skill that they can utilize in the workforce.
That makes sense. Thank you.
Are we working with South Piedmont for these hands-on careers?
We do work with South Piedmont regarding transferable skills and machining and things like that. We have
What about automotive and things like that?
So automotive,
and
South Piedmont,
HVAC and things like that.
South Piedmont actually uses Central Academy to teach their courses. And so as a student progresses through our program, then they can take either a career and college promise course, or once they graduate, take South Piedmont courses right here at Central Academy after hours.
Mr. Filter, to go on Ms. Helms's comments, don't we give SAE certification in some automotive classes?
There are student certifications for SAE as well as ICAR for the collision.
And what that does, Ms. Helms, they can go straight to a dealership.
Yeah.
That's
Now, the new automotive expansion down at Forest Hills, that will just basically be for Forest Hills or anyone else, the overflow from here that can get there?
I would anticipate that an overflow from here, if they could get there, would be able to. So we started a pilot program about 3 years ago, and we had a teacher that rotated from school to school to offer the intro classes. And it has blossomed so that I think this year there's about 400 students across the county that are taking some sort of automotive course. And a lot of that concentration is in Forest Hills.
Okay, I guess to summarize, I see two opportunities with this data. First of all, we have qualified, but we have qualified students that can't get into these academies at CATA or wherever. Number two is we have some very fine academies housed in the high schools around the county, which I fear transportation is a roadblock. So those are the two challenges I want to throw out to staff to see. You hash those over, and we need to, as more and more opportunities are out in this world without a college education. I talk to clients every day in the field of electrical, heating and air conditioning, automotive repair that are dying for qualified people. There is a need in the marketplace. We have wonderful facilities and we have people that have interest. We just got to figure out a way to meet the demand and get through the bottlenecks of transporting those that don't have that available to them. And I'll just throw that out, and everybody will just try and hash on that and see what we can come up with.
I would say that certainly in teaching and learning, we receive those two, and certainly that's something we can look at. If we also kind of back up and look at everything that's happening through Dr. Houlihan's emphasis about career readiness and college readiness, the Naviance. Some people say Naviance, some say Naviance, but Naviance, I'm saying Navi. Naviance account, after when the students take their test, we're able to look at what are the vocational and what are the career footprints that we have to set forward.
Right.
That's a resource that we can use. Twice through Dr. Houlihan's direction, we've met with the Carolina workforce to look at a program that is free that they offer called Career Headlight. And students can actually enter their information, which also works with College Board data that we receive, those predictors, and it can show, for example, what the careers are out there. It matches their skills, and even here's the salary predictions that they have right now. So in all of this, there's a big puzzle in putting these pieces together that this could be a part of.
We are blessed to have this demand, and we are blessed to have these facilities. I just want to make sure that everybody who wants a shot at one of these academies for life skills, we get them there.
Okay.
Mr. Filter, to build on what Mr. Side said, what really got this conversation started with me and him about 2 weeks ago, and then I told Dr. Jones we wanted you here. I found out that they're converting 4 rooms at CATA into a music production studio. Is that right?
That's correct.
Well, then, of course, mine and Gary's first reaction was, why are we not using those classrooms for courses that we have? We had to turn kids away instead of building it. Now, I don't know how full that music production academy is going to be when it opens, but it really, I guess what we would like to see is I would like to see you start coming to curriculum anytime a change is made, and maybe facilities anytime walls are moved, just so we know what's going on.
And I can certainly do that. The music production program is actually in its 3rd year. So this is their 3rd year cohort. But until they got to this 3rd year, they didn't need the expanded utilization of the facilities.
So it's not a new one.
It's not a new one. It's
taking it to the next level.
correct.
Gotcha.
And I'm certainly a proponent of the arts,
Right.
but CATA was started out as a CTE high school, and it seems like it's getting the high paying skills that Mr. Sides is talking about seem to be losing rooms to some other courses.
Okay.
And of course,
I'll do
with the
that.
arts, we get parents who call us and say, tell me what you have offering with strings and orchestra. And we've had some calls about music production because that is emerging because students have that technology within their pads and other things. That's one of the reasons we look at. So yes, sir.
So can I just go back to Mr. Side's question, and for our staff to think about? I mean, our commitment is we'll continue to review this and study it and figure out different options. On the transportation, I'm making the assumption that the only reason we provide transportation to schools like CATA or maybe the early college is because there are school choice options. Kids are applying to get in, and it's across the entire district. And we don't have policy right now that outlines the different programs and options, what's choice, what's not. And I've brought that to the attention of the chair of the policy committee, and we're going to take a look at that. But I will say I'm only aware of us providing transportation where you have those two comprehensive schools, not academies within a comprehensive school, but two schools, whole school models.
Mm-hmm.
That's the only some reason I think we do that. So looking at transportation to all of your academies, which are not school-wide models, that would be something our transportation team would have to take a hard look at in terms of cost. But we'll look at it. We'll evaluate it.
I agree with you, Dr. Houlihan, but going along with what Mr. Side said, we had such a huge demand in medical at CATA, and we already have the transportation in place there. I would like to see that expanded because we've got transportation covered there. Okay.
We'll take a look.
Could I ask one last question?
Certainly.
Do you have do you develop as part of the CTE program a multi-year plan as far as where you want to expand or start or add to the CTE curriculum across the system?
We generally, what we'll do is we'll take a look at that early this year to look at what we're going to implement in upcoming next year.
For next year. Could you at some point share that with us early in the process? That'd be great.
Yes,
That'd be great.
In fact, at the next meeting, it would be nice to see your budget numbers and where you're going to put
Can do
them
that.
this year.
All right. We'll do.
Okay. Thank you very much,
Thank you.
Mr. Filter. Moving on, instructional materials for 2017-18, Dr. Jones.
Thank you very much. It is, we're making some renewals for this year regarding instructional materials and resources that we are utilizing. And there are 2 vendors in which the price is over $100,000. So we wanted to bring before curriculum. The first one is going to be our Canvas management system. This is the 3rd year of the state contract in which we receive a price that was negotiated statewide for 3 years, and this is year number 3. And we, of course, have provided you the information on how much that cost per student. So that is that's with a company called Instructure, and we need to renew that for the upcoming year in order to have access for Canvas. The second one is a program we use called iReady, and iReady provides, explained in there, that we provide diagnostic assessments, and then it has lessons that match the students, the results of the students from the diagnostic that goes in depth with strands and objectives, as well as there's a teacher toolkit that we use with elementary. Dr. Crawford polled the teachers and did gain input on how that was used last year, and that was a positive tool. Mm-hmm. It does organize the content and instruction by standard and gives teachers the tools to teach. So those are 2 vendors we submit at this time.
Okay, Doctor, we'll need to vote on that for a recommendation to the full
Yes,
board.
sir.
Let me ask you one question about the Canvas payment.
Mhm.
And I don't know if it's doable, but as I understand it, if the county buys that, they get the sales tax back.
Anytime we make a purchase, just
We have to pay sales.
include sales tax. I'm not
Yes.
sure what happens.
The county can get it back.
Okay.
I thought we could get it back.
No, no.
When we pay it, it's gone.
I don't know.
Would you check into that and see if it's doable under the contract? I mean, if it is, that's $10,600 that can go for other,
I'll talk with Mr. Covington.
okay. All right, they need an action. I need a motion to recommend this to the full board to appropriate or go ahead and purchase this part of the 3rd year.
Could I ask one more question
Yes.
about Canvas? Dr. Jones, I don't know if you've heard this feedback. Somehow I recall it being mentioned. Are we required to buy Canvas for every single student?
Initially, when we had the contract, we had to buy for every single student. We went in and said, with the K-2 students, could we possibly look at, and by that time, that is the way the state did the contracting. So we're hoping at the renewal, we can see if K-2 students are not using it, then how can we adjust that? But this is what we have to do at this time according to the contract.
Thank
From
you.
the state.
So this contract we'll have a window next year where we can look at it.
Yes, sir. And we haven't heard from the state how they will move forward with this.
I'll make a motion to recommend to the full board appropriation of $168,213.44 for Canvas and the total of the two for I ready to recommend to the full board with the caveat, if we can save the sales tax, let's try.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Thank you.
Aye.
Okay, does anybody else have anything else to say? And if you don't, need a motion to adjourn.
Well, I'd just like to second your thoughts of thanking all the staff for being here today and for making this the first, I believe, curriculum committee meeting that is aired on our YouTube channel. Thank you for making that happen.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your
All right.
support.
Motion to adjourn.
Have a motion?
Second.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.